All right, this recording is going to be to give you a basic outline here as to just how simple this is going to be on the day of the exam to actually remember all of these kind of main topics that you're going to get possibly hit with. Obviously under different categories, but what I'm going to do here, just hopefully in under 10 to 15 minutes, is just chronologically go through each unit, starting with unit basically 2 to 8, and I'm not going decade by decade. I'm going big picture theme here. So with the objective of trying to show you that if you can remember at least 3 to 4 big things, big movements happening at that particular time that the prompt asks you about, you're going to be fine, because you can connect any part of the following that I'm about to write. You can connect that to anything having to do with religion, culture, politics, society, and the economy. Remember, we talked about in class, you take a topic that the DBQ is asking you about, whether it's immigration or foreign policy or whatever the case may be, and you're talking in your thesis, if there's big change, small change, to what extent, and then in your body paragraphs, I'll try to do green here. In your body paragraphs, what you're doing is you're incorporating how that particular movement changed over time: religion, culture, politics, society, the economy. And then, like, for example, so this is like part 1 of that, and then part 2 is you're asking and you're answering what groups were affected, who got left behind, right? Why did they get left behind? Talked to you since August about women, blacks, Native Americans, immigration, immigrants. You could even make an argument that if it's about the 50s with the Red Scare, or with the 1950s with McCarthyism and the Red Scare, you can make an argument that people were falsely accused and they got left behind. Loyalists in the American Revolution, did they get left behind? Well, yeah, some of them died. Why were they loyalists, right? They owed somebody money, or they were worried about mob rule. So things like that. But you're taking the topic. All right, let's do the topic here in red. So whatever the topic is, let's say you get hit with migration on the DBQ. You're going to look at migration. You're going to talk about how it affected these categories here, right? Was there change? Did things stay the same? Maybe both. Maybe one paragraph says, yeah, religion changed a lot, but while religion changed, culture didn't, right? Talk about that. And then, as a follow-up within the same paragraph in your analysis, you're just talking about what groups were affected. And then, ultimately, the thing that this whole DBQ comes down to, especially in your why sentence of you're happy, is what did this all lead to? Right? What did that particularly lead to? All right. And again, remember your 4 happies: context, historical context, audience, purpose, or point of view. And then this is important because this would eventually lead to women getting left behind as seen through the Seneca Falls or whatever. Okay, so let's get back to the main purpose of this video, which is to just kind of walk you through and to hopefully ease your mind as to how really, essentially how simple this is to remember. So let's start, again, this is totally off the cuff, and nothing prepared here. Just kind of going and seeing what pops in my mind. Now you're saying, well, Mr. Sprang, you've taught this class for 11 years. This is easier for you. Well, yeah, but you'd be shocked how much you forget, or you'd be shocked just how much of a beast this class is, and it's challenging. Okay, so let's start with basically, let's go, obviously Unit 1 is 1607 to 1754. All right, this is Unit 1. What's happening during this time period? And I'm mostly talking to myself here. So what's happening during this time period? Well, all right, I know God, gold, glory, right? We're trying to explore. I know this is Jamestown. I know this is the French and Indian War. All right, God, gold, glory. This is going to shift. God, gold, glory kind of turns into tobacco. Oops, Claire will get mad at me. It's T-O, tobacco, right? They find tobacco. The English find tobacco. I know in Unit Unit 1, this is actually Unit 2, I apologize. I know in Unit 1 we talked about the Spanish encomienda systems, the Costa system, New France. All right, I know that's happening, but now during this time, this is an era of colonization. I know that in Unit 2. So now these colonies break out. I know we got a ton of colonies breaking out. They break out into different sections. All right, we got New England, got the middle, got the south. We also have royal colonies. Now that we've got religious tolerance here. These people are nuts. Remember John Winthrop, the Puritans? Women. Definitely women got left behind. Talked about women there. All right. What else is happening during this time period? All right. God, Gold, Glory, the colonies, slavery, 1619. Right? First slaves brought over. Another big thing that happened here, Bacon's Rebellion, 1676. This is important because we see a shift to chattel slavery. It's really important. All right, those are some big things there. This is also slavery, but we also got the Virginia House of Burgesses. Okay. All right, let's get into the 1700s. I know there's going to be some change over time here with, as we get into the 1700s, we're going to see the British versus the French for control of North America. It's going to lead us to the French and Indian War. Oh, and this is going to cause a change over time because we obviously know, the British are going to win. They're going to be victorious. All right, so they're going to claim North America. And as they claim North America, what's going to happen here is this is going to end salutary neglect on the colonies. All right, and now because salutary neglect is over, the British land in a ton of debt, and they're going to practice, because the British are in debt, who do they look to? They look to the colonists for money. And how are the colonists going to make money for the crown? They're going to practice a thing called mercantilism, as seen through things like the Navigation Acts. All right, colonists are going to be really upset about this. Oops, whoa, too big here. Colonists are going to be very upset about the Navigation Acts. This here is going to lead to a change in identity for the colonies. Okay, what is that change? They're going to go from colonial identity to becoming, quote, like having this American identity. And who's going to really help that? Who's going to make that go a lot faster? This guy named Thomas Paine. Common sense. I think it's Ben Franklin that has a good quote in U.S. history. It says, common sense is not so common. You see that a lot as a teacher. Okay, nobody's laughing. That's a joke. All right, let's go to... Okay, so now that changes. Welcome to the American Revolution real fast. So we're going to have this 1776 to... Oh, we're in a new unit. We're in Unit 3 now. All right, so we're 1754. 1800. So 1776 to 1781, we're going to have the American Revolution. There are some good battles in there. Saratoga gets us a French alliance. Daughters of Liberty, Sons of Liberty. I can talk about that later if I need to, in depth, if there's a doc that I need on. But really, here are okay, so we got the big American Revolution, kind of overrated. And then we're going to move to... really the big kahuna here, because this sets up a relationship between the people and the federal government. And this is going to be really the first party system. So now I got a first party system here. This first party system is going to be the Federalists versus, of course, the Democratic Republicans. The Democratic Republicans, their founding father is Jefferson, obviously. They're former anti-federalists that did not want the Constitution ratified. So this is important because we're in a party system now here, and what it does, I'm going to do this in a different color. What it does is it really splits Americans. And not only does this split Americans, but it creates, this first party system creates, how do I say it? It creates different views of government, right, within American society. So like the Federalists were very big, strong central government. Federal government over states' rights, whereas the Democratic Republicans were very states' rights, and they were the opposite. So this is where you can really cook, actually, on the FRQ, anywhere, SAQ, DBQ, LEQ. You can say that the first party system was so important because it kind of puts people into different categories. It splits Americans. It causes a divide. That's a change over time, certainly from the American Revolution. And it creates different views of government and its roles. Like, what is the question that we've been fighting for forever? What is the role of government in our life? Okay. And then you've got some big things that the Federalists do. All right. The Federalists are in charge from, what are they in charge from? 1790 basically to 1800. We know we have Washington in there. He passes things like the Judiciary Act, of course, Hamilton and his vision for America. Hamilton's vision with the National Bank, the tariff, buying the debt of the states. This is going to give us, eventually, this is going to lead us to Henry Clay and his American system. So this is really important because Hamilton is really important because he sets up a precedent, Precedent. He sets up a precedent for an active government coming up in the future generations. As seen through Henry Clay's American system, we don't have a market revolution. We don't become an industrial powerhouse in the first or second industrial revolutions without Clay's American system. Rooted in Hamilton's vision for America with a national bank, things like that. Okay, moving on here. Now let's go Unit 4. We've got 1800 to 1848. So this is, now we've got Jefferson, obviously, as president. We know the things he does. Louisiana Purchase. He tries to really bring down the role of government. So he tries to do this limited government. Okay. His view on the government's going to change a little bit with the Louisiana Purchase. I think we know that because acquiring land is nowhere to be found in the U.S. Constitution. So he's going to have to expand, going from a strict originalist of the Constitution to a little bit more of a progressive, modern-day liberal into the Constitution's a living, breathing document and should change with time. He's going to be president he's going to do the Embargo Act. We kind of glossed over that in class. That's important. The Embargo Act of 1807. France and Britain are at war again, and he embargoes trading with either one of them. And that's going to kill the American economy. It's really going to hurt the American economy. But we also know during this time, 1800, 1848, we have an era of good feelings, one-party rule. Actually, it doesn't start in 1800. This doesn't start until the end of the War of 1812 because the Federalists are going to die off. We do have a Virginia dynasty, though, here. All right. The next three presidents, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, are all going to oh my gosh, I can't spell. They're going to be all from Virginia. Okay, let's move on to this War of 1812. What's its biggest implications? I mean, look, I can go through the whole War of 1812, Eastern War with Western labels. The biggest implication for it, though, is, like, I would say, as your teacher and as a guy who's taught this class plenty of time, I would say the biggest implication here that I'm going to put in blue from the War of 1812 is two things. Number one, it kills the Federalist Party. Okay. And number two, it really opens westward expansion. And this is going to come back to haunt us. I mean, of course, we're going to have to expand west. That's what gets a strong, powerful nation. But this here, do I have a highlighter? This here is going to really kill us, all right, in terms of civil war. You could almost make an argument. It's a weak argument. There's not a lot of data there yet, but or facts. But you could make an argument that really this was the War of 1812 that created or opened the door to sectionalism, because in this class, you know that whenever we talk about this word American westward expansion, we know that that's often paired with sectionalism. Pre-Civil War. All right, again, the War of 1812, there, you know the causes of it. You kind of know the further implications of it, but these are the big things. I'm trying to just take in a God's view here. Plus, I have to go to bed soon. All right, War of 1812. Now we're in an era of good feelings. It's one-party rule. Now that the Federalists have died, a lot of you have asked and inquired about having me explain the party systems again. I'll do that on the weekend review sessions, no problem. But just kind of heads up here, as the Federalists die out, the Republicans, Democratic Republicans known as, don't get them confused with modern day Republicans, they're going to split, right? You've got our national Republicans, which are basically Federalists in name only, and you've got the Jeffersonian Republicans. These are kind of the OG guys. This is going to be very Andrew Jackson. This is going to be very Henry Clay. Things like Clay, Jackson. So actually what's going to happen here is these Jeffersonian Republicans are going to morph into, they're going to kind of turn into over time what we call Jacksonian Democrats, right? Certainly. Actually, we're going to keep cooking here real fast. They're going to turn into these Jacksonian Democrats, states' rights, pro-slavery, limited government, even though Jackson, our book says, was a very consequential president, very contradictory president. These Jacksonian Democrats are not going to become the current Democratic Party, morph into them. They're actually going to kind of become the, they're going to become like they're going to morph into the Republican Party of the basically like 1960s South, right? And then these national Republicans are going to turn into Whigs, definitely. And then they're going to turn into kind of these radical Republicans who believed in a strong government to do Reconstruction. And then these radical Republicans over time are going to morph into basically FDR New Deal liberals, right? This is a way in advance. Maybe go from Jeffersonian Republicans in the 1800s to Jacksonian Democrats to all the way to the Republican Party of the 60s. But you can kind of see where they're going. Now, how did I create this chart here? Just with my totally on the spur of the moment. I have no notes in front of me. I'm just kind of thinking out loud. I did it through just thinking about their views of government, right? I was like, okay, how did these guys, both parties, how did they view the role of government? You know what else this is? What was their views of federalism, which is the sharing of power between the states and in Washington, D.C., and the central government. So as I was kind of doing this quick chart, I just thought, what are their views on government and federalism? That's all you do. All right, so we've got this split here after the War of 1812. Republicans split up. Now we're going to move into, we're still in Unit 4 here. We're going to move into a market revolution, right? So now we're going to see some changes in the economy here. America is very strong. We have a national bank. Eastern goods connect Eastern goods to Western markets to Eastern. Western markets. Western goods to Eastern markets, right? So what the market revolution did, this provided lines of credit as well as like loans. They kind of mean the same thing. All right. Now, at the same time, we have this market revolution. Remember that picture we said here. This is going to begin. Market revolution is going to support, and a main part of it's going to be the cotton complex here. All right. So remember this picture we did in class? This really, hopefully this very, very helpful picture here. Ooh, too close. Too close. All right, and so here's what it looked like. Remember we said at the heart of the, so we have the first Industrial Revolution in America, which is basically 1815 to 1860. We're going to round up. All right, and kind of separate here as this. And then at the heart of this Industrial Revolution is the cotton complex. Now, also feeding into it is the market revolution as well as this transportation revolution. Okay, roads, bridges, canals. So these things are feeding into it, and so is this cotton complex. It's at the heart of it, because this isn't possible and this isn't possible without this cotton complex. And then a group of people that had a role in this was, of course, women and things like the Waltham-Lowell system. Advancement of women's rights, advancement of getting them out of the home. It destroyed the yeoman culture in the Northeast because the girls were basically taken out of their culture and given over to the factory system in Waltham-Lowell, Massachusetts. Okay, so we got that. We got Jackson now. Jackson is president from 1829 to 1837. Technically, he's elected in 1828. He's inaugurated the next year. I just wanted to give you the specific dates, so you're not confused. This is obviously Andrew Jackson, the era of Jackson. Very, very consequential president, right? I could spend a whole lecture just talking about what Jackson does, but again, just for the sake of time, the big thing with Jackson, Native American, kitchen cabinet, spoil system, all that stuff. What he does, though, is he kind of creates this second party system. That's how, I mean, he was he was a kind of a bull in a china shop. He was a very consequential president. And the second party system is really the Democrats, led by Jackson. These are the modern day Democrats, right? Although they hate Jackson nowadays, but nevertheless, modern day Democrats versus the Whigs. So the National Republicans die off and they kind of change their name to Whigs. That was an insult to Jackson. The Whigs were the people that opposed the monarchy in Britain, and they called him King Andrew. So it's kind of a slap in the face. All right, it's a big thing with Jackson. We're going to get into the 30s, and now we're moving from Jackson here. I want this. From Jackson, we're going to move into Manifest Destiny. Sectionalism. One thing I haven't talked a lot about here real fast is religion. I'm going to make some honorable mentions here, and I'm going to mention, I should have done this earlier, but let's go back. First Great Awakening, right, versus the Second Great Awakening. First Great Awakening was obviously First Great Awakening was pre-revolution. This was a response to the Enlightenment. The Second brings the denominations together. And this is important because it was centered around the temperance movement. All right, temperance movement. And when you think of temperance, I told you in this class, this was a rise of the middle class. It's called the self-made man. The self-made man. That's obviously important during this Industrial Revolution, right? That you can enter into the middle class through temperance, through benevolence, this benevolent empire, as well as through working hard in the American middle class. All right, so now kind of going back to what I said here, that's highlighted here, this manifest destiny, okay? This is really defines the 1840s, because now we're getting into the 1840s here, which we talked about today in class. So if we look at the 1840s, all right, this is the Mexican War. This is Polk. This is Texas, okay, and the Alamo. This is the Wilmot, 1846, the Wilmot Proviso. All right. The 40s, really starting at the end, and everybody should write this down or make a note of this, starting at the end of Andrew Jackson and going to the beginning, basically from the end of Andrew Jackson all the way to the Civil War, to John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry in 1859, it's sectionalism. It's this manifest destiny, this push to the Pacific. And then you get things like the slave power conspiracy, right? 1850, we're in a new unit here. This will be 1844 to 1877. Reconstruction, it's Unit 6. I'm sorry, Unit 5. 1850s, you got a lot of things happening. You got the Compromise of 1850. That's Henry Clay. It's his last act. Oh, I forgot the Missouri Compromise earlier, 1821. You've got Kansas and Nebraska Act. And by the way, that's going to happen to you too. You're going to take the test. You're going to get out of it. Be like, oh my gosh, I forgot the Missouri Compromise. And then you're going to be like, it's okay because I still cooked on what I wrote. It's okay if you forget things as long as you're cooking on what you do remember. There's a lot in history. They don't expect you to remember it all. They just expect you to talk about changes over time or what stayed the same and how and who was affected. Dred Scott. That SCOTUS case was a bad one. Blacks are people, it said. And then, of course, this is important with popular sovereignty. Stephen Douglas, that overturned the Kansas-Nebraska Act. That's SOV, that's sovereignty. And then John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry. Okay. Welcome to the Civil War, 1860 to... Basically, it's 1861 to 1865 is the Civil War. Some big battles there. Obviously, Gettysburg is a big battle. Another one was Vicksburg, because Vicksburg split the South in half. But the big thing with the Civil War that I want you to look at, the real big thing here is there's kind of two parts to it, right? 1861 to 1863, the South is winning. And then the mid-1863 to 1865, the North is winning. And it's a turn towards this kind of, quote, hard war. A lot of these guys, all these generals had fought together in the Mexican-American War, so it was hard to go brother against brother. You didn't want to kill an American. But in 1863, it was like a Band-Aid. Do you take it off slow or do you take it off really quickly? Lincoln goes with a hard war, and this is basically won by people like Grant, his generals Grant and Sherman. There's actually a book sitting in my basement called Grant and Sherman, the relationship I need to read at some point. Okay. What's going on during the Civil War with religion, culture, politics, society, and the economy? That's what you should be writing about, right? Role of women, blacks, all right? And then, obviously, Reconstruction. Did that in class today. 1865 to 1877. It got radical, though, led by the Republicans. We call it Radical Reconstruction. From basically 1866 to 1877. They let it and overturned Johnson's veto on everything. Talked about in class the specifics of Reconstruction. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go into that right now. I just kind of want to show you big idea, big themes. All right, Reconstruction. Then after Reconstruction, during this time period, really beginning after Reconstruction in the 1870s to basically the early 1900s, early 1900s, you've got a Gilded Age. The real heart of the Gilded Age, though, the real height of it was the 1885 to 1900. That's the heart of that Gilded Age. It's beginning in the 70s because America is turning into an industrial capitalist nation. But it really, the heart of it is really 1885 to 1900. We have this Gilded Age, also known as America's second industrial revolution. And big things happen here, right? At the heart of this is the reason why it's possible is immigration, westward expansion, and basically the birth of the corporation. All of these things are the things that make this Gilded Age, this second industrial revolution, possible. All right, how did it affect society? Simple, many different ways. It affected, like, for example, each one of these, you could say it affected the cities, how they looked. It affected Native Americans and things like the Homestead Act and the Exodusters. Remember the 40,000 blacks that moved to Texas? The corporation gave rise to a middle class in America. It also had calls for reform. Okay. All right. The Gilded Age is succeeded by the Progressive Era. All right. Let's get progressive. It's a response. The Progressive Era is pretty much 1890s to 1914. This is a response to the Gilded Age, right? What was the goal of the progressives? I'm just going to do the goals. They had really 4 goals. Number 1, clean up poverty, right? People, get them help. Clean the city. The city was gross. It was disgusting. Kids were playing in trash. Clean up the cities. Number 3, oh, you know what? This should say not clean up poverty, but whatever. Clean up corruption. Yeah. City was corrupted. Right? City was corrupted. These are the 3 big ones. I know I said 4, and I'm blanking on the 4th. That'll happen to you too. But basically, at the end of the day, the big things with the progressives, if you remember, they wanted to fight poverty, they wanted to clean up the city, and they wanted to fight political corruption. You're solid. You're fine. How did they do it? What did they do? Jane Addams' Hull House. They fought the urban political machines. The city changes, the type of city changes. Remember, we talked about like the Chicago School of Architecture and all those things. Those come out to be because of the how cities are changing with like electric power, things like that. Okay, continuing to cook here. Let's go to, got World War One. Actually, before World War One, let me erase this real fast. You have a pretty progressive president that sneaks in there. You got, oops, what's going on here? Why are you not working? Okay, we've got what's his name? We've got Teddy Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson. And tell you what, I'm going to do part 2 of this video tomorrow. I'll record part 2 of the video, and I'm going to try to share these notes here so that I can kind of just show you how quickly this whole thing, you can kind of go through this whole thing and just be like, oh yeah, this is just kind of some anecdotal notes on, you know, what we learned so far in history up to the turn of the 20th century, basically 1900.